Hello everybody, my name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any time, let's get into our stories of the day. Rip up my test? Okay, then give me an A. Back in high school, around 10th grade, I took driver's education. I already had my driver's license for a few years and the class was not mandatory. However, my insurance company would take off 20% from your bill if you completed the class. So why not take an easy A class? Well, out of all my high school classes, this one was the largest cluster I had ever seen. Most other classes only had one teacher. The odd class might have two teachers if the class was large or if it was a unique subject. Driver's Ed, however, had 7 different teachers. Why 7? Well, this was because my school was a big deal football school. We had multiple state and national championships, therefore literal millions of dollars were pumped into the school's football program to keep us winning. This meant that we had a huge football coaching staff as well. But with any school, there was always a funding shortage for other classes, such as driver's ed. So our school had a genius solution to simply have the coaching staff fill in and teach these classes, since most of them were just hanging out anyways till football practice started in the afternoon. This would not have been so bad, except none of them ever had any formal teaching experience. And aside from being adults with driver's license, they had no real qualifications to teach the class either. And with the majority of the coaches being the stereotypical meathead jock type, there was a clear level of delusion in their teaching ability. Overall, I was doing fine in the class as I was a B average student. Although the constant football analogies were annoying and the blatant favoritism towards the student athletes was sickening. It was just like any real high school experience. Each coach would teach one section for a week or two, then conclude their section with a test. Then the next coach would rotate in, rinse and repeat. While annoying, it was still tolerable. Then entered Coach Richard. And he was the most Richard of Richards. The size of his ego was only second to the size of his waistline. He could not go more than a few minutes without a humble brag or telling us about how one time he alone completed some embellished and obviously fake story to try and impress us teenagers. But the most infuriating part of him was his demand for almost military levels of obedience and respect, when he himself had zero professionalism. He would constantly tell us how he would whip us into shape and teach us how to follow rules and pay the consequences if we didn't. His 2 weeks of lessons was heck. He passed out books to the class that we each had to sign out for accountability. His test was going to be exclusively on that book and he basically just yelled at us to read the book ourselves in class. If we had any questions, his only response was, "What does the book say?" A request for help would only earn you the reply of, "This is a teaching moment for you to learn self-sufficiency." A true Richard. The day of his test was fast approaching and he had a rule that he had continuously preached at the start of each class. "On the day of the test, you will turn in your test with your copy of the book. If you do not have your book, I will rip up your tests in front of the class." We were all pretty sure it was a bluff, but on the other hand, he had such an ego that if pushed, he would probably do it just to make a point. Well, the day of the test finally arrived. 200 multiple choice questions on a Scantron paper. One of those fill in the bubble tests that a computer can grade. I had studied my butt off and the test was still incredibly hard and took the entire period to complete. I tried my hardest and racked my brain trying to recall every bit of information that he neglected to actually teach us. Finally, I filled in the last answer and breathed a sigh of relief. I grabbed my test and reached into my bag for my book. My heart dropped as I pulled out the only book in my bag, my physical science book. In my haste for the class, I had pulled the wrong book from my locker. My driver's ed book was still sitting in my locker on the other side of the campus. I took a deep breath and decided to face the punishment head on as I clearly made a mistake. Coach Richard didn't even look at me as I approached his desk, just tapped on the pile of tests that had already been turned in as if I didn't know where to put mine. Next to that pile was the book log for us to sign for returning the book. He then extended his hand for the book and waited. "Coach, I said, trying to keep my voice low to not draw much attention. I grabbed the wrong book from my locker. I can either go get it now or bring it right after the class before the next starts. From his reaction, you would have thought I had spit on his high school football team's national trophy. He jumped up and immediately started yelling, drawing the attention of the entire class. I don't remember anything specific he said. I was painfully shy and withdrawn, so being the center of attention like that, at that age, made me shut down. But I understood the meaning behind the words. He took my test from the top of the pile and announced to the class that his threat had been serious. I would now have to pay the price for not following instructions. And he proceeded to rip my test into confetti, dropping the pieces directly into the trash can next to him. Defeated, I walked back to my desk and tried to turn invisible. After class, I decided to still follow through with returning the book before the next class started. I ran to my locker, grabbed the correct book that time, and ran back to class. Upon entering the coach's office, I looked around but did not see Coach Richard. One of the other coaches took notice and asked me if I needed anything. Me, trying to be short and to the point, just showed him the book and said I was here to return it to Coach Richard. He took the book and walked over to Coach Richard's desk and placed it on top of the rest. Then he pulled out the book log and checked off on me returning it. I signed it and he placed it back on Coach Richard's desk. Now, at this point, I assumed that in the next day or two, Coach Richard would simply give me a retest. But as he rotated with another coach, I didn't see him again for several weeks. I was concerned because if I had to take that test again without reviewing the material for weeks, I would most certainly do worse. Eventually though, Coach Richard and several other coaches were all in the class catching up on grading papers and other tasks, while we were told that we could talk but just keep the noise down. "OP," Coach Richard called out. I stood and walked up to him. "Did you take my test?" At the very moment he said that, a light went off in my head. I realized that he had no recollection of me taking his test and him ripping it up. His tone, for once, held no malice, just general confusion. It was at this point my malicious compliance kicked off and I decided to answer each and every question as honestly as I could. "Yes, coach, I took the test on the same day with the rest of the class." "Did you turn it in to me?" "Yes, coach, I placed it directly in your hand." He scratched his chin and continued looking through the Scantron sheets looking for mine. I stood there silently, having decided to offer no assistance in the matter. But I did decide to further prove my own point. "Coach, I turned in the book and signed the log as proof." He pulled out the book log and saw that, yes, I had indeed signed the log indicating the return. And to his knowledge, only he would allow a student to sign it after they turned in both the test and the book. So I stood there and watched him silently as he tried to unsuccessfully figure out if he had lost the test or not. Eventually, he just sighed and said, "Well, you signed the paper saying you turned it in, so if I cannot find it, I will have to give you an A." I simply nodded and returned to my desk, making sure to not show any visible emotion that might betray me. To no surprise, he never found my test, and he held true to his word and gave me an A. What an incredibly lucky turn of events at the end there. If you were in OP's shoes, you reached in your bag and you realized you don't have the book. What would you be thinking, or what would you do in that moment? Let me know in the comments section down below. The time I used a piece of paper to piss off an ex-Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. This is the story about how I used a little piece of paper to piss off a contractor. Players here are me, a specialist at the time, my team leader, a sergeant, a piece of paper signed by an Air Force captain, and a really impatient former SEAL, now civilian security contractor. The story. We had a gate that led in and out of a large NATO compound in Afghanistan that was closed at night and open during the day except for 2 times. Those 2 times were supposed to be so we could have a break and sit in the shack with the air conditioning for a while. We closed the gate once in the morning for an hour and a half and once in the afternoon for 45 minutes. I am okay with telling you this because after we left, they permanently sealed the gate and created a different point of entry into the compound, so not violating OPSEC. Well, when this gate was closed, the only people allowed to go through were the commanding general of our compound, and anyone with more than 1 star, and units and tactical vehicles going out or coming back from a mission. So says the Air Force Security Force captain, and he made sure to print out those orders and put them in our little shack. The exception to this was when the Base Defense Operations Center, or BDOC, would call us over the radio and tell us to let people through on a case-by-case scenario. The problem was that it didn't matter what your reason was, the BDOC would always say yes. This made everyone that worked that post very frustrated because what was the point in closing the gate to give us a break if we still don't get a break? If anything, it made our lives worse because it took a lot of work to move the giant metal gate open and closed. Anyway, after a while, everyone just stopped calling the BDOC and just asked the people working the gate to let them through. Most people that are not me would, let's say, freak it and let them through. So much so that they started to expect it. One thing you should know about me is that I don't like being wrong. And if you follow the rules, you are not wrong. Usually. Well, one day I was working that post and it was my time to close the gate. I let my team leader know so he can call it up, and I shut it down and start to chat with some of the Georgian contractors that worked with us. Well, we hear a horn honk and I go walk to the bars next to the gate so I can see what's up, and it's this one very specific contractor. He is known for being arrogant, rude, and a prick. Very quick to remind you that he is more high speed than you are and how cool he is. Well, I keep things professional, but I hated this guy and I was already frustrated about having to open the gate not even 3 minutes since I closed it, so I decided to be extra. Me equals me, impatient contractor equals X-Seal. Good morning, sir. Where are you headed?
Hey man, open the gate, I have to get to work.
I apologize, but I can't let you through. My orders are when the gate is closed, I am only allowed to let through the general and tactical vehicles going on mission. Since you are neither, I can't let you through until the gate opens back up in 1 hour and 25 minutes.
Bull, they let me through all the time. Just let me freaking through.
Again, I'm very sorry. I'm only following orders. I pull the copy of the orders out of my pocket. See, here it is, signed by Captain Redacted.
Oh, for freak's sake, Specialist, just let us through.
Sir, I do not have the rank to disobey a direct order from a captain. The only way you can come through is if you either wait or the BDOC radios in that I can let you through. You could try calling the BDOC and asking them to have me let you through. At this point, the contractor turns and walks away cursing me, the Army National Guard, the infantry, my mom, Afghanistan, the dirt, and his up-armored Land Cruiser. I walk over to the truck my team leader was in and he pokes his head out of the turret. I proceed to tell him about what I just pulled and to let me know when the BDOC calls to have me open the gate for him. He looks at me all serious and asks, "Is he mad?" "Oh, he's furious." Team leader says, "Good." Proceeds to high-five me because we both hate that dude. So I walk over to the shack and wait. After about 30 minutes of doing a crossword puzzle, my team leader yells to me that the BDOC called and asked me to open the gate. With a thumbs up and a "Roger that, Sart," I get up and open the gate. The vehicle goes through and I close the gate. He shoots me a death glare as he drives by, and I give him a smile and a wave knowing that I just inconvenienced him and probably made him late for work. The best part is that I found out later from my squad leader that my first sergeant is the one who answered the phone in the BDOC. Well, Mr. High Speed gave the first sergeant an attitude and the first sergeant gave him an earful. I don't know what all was said, but if you were ever in the army and in the infantry, you know how bad it can be when you freak with the first sergeant. The end result was that he would call to open the gate after he knew for sure that enough time had passed to make sure that the X-Seal was guaranteed to be late. The X-Seal guy made sure to be earlier of the gate closing after that. I think this kind of goes back to some basic preschool child rules, you know? If you treat somebody bad, you'll probably also get treated badly. You don't want veggies in your chicken soup? Got it, kids. Kids are awesome at malicious compliance, but it is a two-way street. My kids can be picky eaters at times. My wife made some darn good chicken soup, but the kids were complaining that there were veggies in their chicken soup. They hate veggies. Veggies make them sick, and they wanted my wife to pick them out of the soup. We tried to tell them that good chicken soup needs veggies to taste good, but they were being stubborn. I'm sure other parents can understand. I told the kids, if you really hate the taste of veggies, I'll make soup tomorrow, and you guys can make sure I only put in stuff you like. They liked that idea at the time. The next day, I get the pot filled with water, all the typical soup ingredients out, and gathered the kids. I asked for their approval on every item. Chicken, yes. Salt, yes. Black pepper, no. Gross, too spicy. Celery, no. I can't even stand the smell. Onions, no. It went on with that, with them rejecting parsley, bay leaves, and other veggies. The total contents of the pot ended up being chicken, water, salt, noodles. After the soup was done cooking, I served it up and they excitedly started to eat. A few funny faces later, one of them said, "It tastes weird, this isn't very good." I said, "But I only put in everything you guys approved. I think from now on, I should make the soup, right?" They looked at each other and said, "Can we have mom soup instead?" Since that day, they haven't complained about finding veggies mixed in the food. Sure, they almost always eat around a carrot or a green pea, but they understand that it adds flavor. This was actually a really good exercise for them to realize that not only are veggies good for you, but they are a complement to a lot of meals. And with that being said, that's all the stories we have for today, so what I want to know is which of these stories was your personal favorite and why? Let me know which story was in the comment section down below. And thank you all so very much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel today. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and don't forget to turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. And thank you again so very much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.